Hello Kaiju fans, welcome back to the Kaiju World Order. I am MM, and this is Monster of the Week as voted on by members of the Kaiju Hugbox Discord server. And this week's monster is everybody's favorite bully, Gabara. Originating from Toho's 1969 amazing film, All Monsters Attack, which I still call Godzilla's Revenge, the original US title for this movie, and I'm never going to stop calling it Godzilla's Revenge. So, let's begin here. So, Gabara, as I said, originates from Godzilla's Revenge, and it is named after a bully of the main character of said movie, Ichiro. Not Gabara, but Ichiro is tormented by a group of kids, and they make his life hell, and he never fights back. But when he goes home, he dreams of Monster Island and Godzilla and Minya, and then his bully gets manifested in his dreams as the Kaiju Gabara. Again, they share the same name, and they have the same exact mentality, they have the same exact personality. Minya is Ichiro in this situation, and with Minya and watching Godzilla fight various monsters on the island, Ichiro eventually learns to face his own bullies and also some bank robbers that got shoehorned into the movie's plot too, and eventually learns to handle himself and conquer his fears and no longer have bullies. So Gabara's role is very simple. He's definitely not a iconic monster whatsoever, but he has an interesting history. For the longest time, people actually weren't sure if Gabara was a real kaiju in the Godzilla franchise or if he only existed in the mind of Ichiro. And looking back, I think it goes more along the lines of the first thing. The movie seems to have it where the Godzilla movies are just that, Godzilla movies. And Ichiro, having a rough childhood, is using those movies to escape and also build his own confidence and being able to overcome the harshness of being a kid in 1960s Japan. So, Gabara as a monster is a very straightforward thing. Its design is based on an ogre, possibly with an oni, with a little bit of cat and toad thrown in for good measure. There's been long-standing reports that Gabara's face was actually recycled from a prior Godzilla suit. Most likely the 1964 suit, if I'm just eyeballing it. This, I don't believe, has ever been 100% confirmed. It might have been in some book by now, but everything I know up to this point is it's only been a long-standing rumor. And for powers, Gabara has electrical powers for really some reason. It generates the electricity in his horn, which then travels down his body into his hands, which allows him to electrocute anything he's touching. This doesn't seem to be all that potent. Like, I don't believe it would, say, dry out Hedra if he would grab Hedra. It seemed to bother Godzilla at best before he just came back and whooped his ass. There are some sources, like the PlayStation 3 Godzilla game and some books, that say Gabara is capable of creating a toxin through his skin, much like some species of toads and frogs can do. If he actually can do this, stats say he can, but we never see him do it in the actual movie. We don't know how strong it would be. And promotional material for the monster also has him shooting lightning bolts from his hands. almost like Darth Sidious. And this is a power that, as a kid, before I saw the movie, and like even this was being showcased on the poster or the VHS box tape, I thought Gabara was going to shoot lightning from his hands. I was waiting for it for the entire movie, and then it never happened. It sucks, but at least if Gabara would pop up in, say, a new fighting game, or if Pipeworks would have brought Gabara in, it's obvious power, he would have just shot lightning from his hands. Now, that was the end of Gabara for a while. He would pop up again in Toho's Go Godman and Go Green Man series, but this Gabara had nothing to do with the Godzilla one. At this time, Toho was using any resources they could to keep the money flowing. And when they had decent suits laying around, they would bust them out. So we ended up getting Gabara, and Minya, and Gorosaurus, and Kamoibos, and a whole bunch of other monsters popping up in these cheap, not Ultraman shows. And Gabara, unfortunately, was one of the monsters that got sucked into this. It's kind of, as a Godzilla fan, it's kind of sad seeing the state of some of these suits, but also, we're never going to see Gabara again in suit form. I would bet money on that. So, if you like the monster and you want some more of him, definitely check out Go Godman and Go Green Man. He pops up in episodes, I believe it's 14. I wish I had some clips and everything I could show you here, but all the copies I have of these shows looks worse than a VHS recording from the 1960s. And VHS didn't even exist then. So, yeah. Unfortunately, I can't really show you much of that. If you go to Wikizilla on their Gabara page, they actually do have some nice shots and GIFs of Gabara using some of his newer powers from those shows. And if you're wondering what they are, he can throw his claws, like literally just pops his claws off and throws them like a grenade, and they blow up. And then he can also somehow eat people whole. When this happens, it's weird. But definitely, if you like the monster, check it out. And then, unfortunately for Gabara, that was it. There were reports in the 1990s that the Trendmasters toy line was going to get Gabara, and he'd probably seen a pretty cool redesign like they did with Gigan and Megalon and Varan and Baragon and all them other Showa-only monsters at the time. And Gabara just never had his time. He never had a Bandai until fairly recently. YMSF did a Gabara. I believe it came out in the early 2010s. Might have been even earlier than that. And Gabara's just not a monster that gets a lot of representation merch-wise. He doesn't have a reaction figure yet. There were some laughable arguments being made last year about why Super 7 should do an Ultimates Gabara. I mean, I'd buy it, but it's never gonna happen. But thankfully, Gabara has made a brief comeback recently. He has a role in the Chibi Godzilla series. He has a role in the Godzibon series. I don't really follow either of these very much because they're just not my thing. I like what they have done with the Gabara puppet. It does look pretty cool, as the Godzibon puppets usually do. I'm just not much of a puppet guy. And then IDW, in which originally forgot to include Gabara as a monster they wanted for their comics, would eventually get the rights to the monster in the early 2020s and brought him in for Godzilla All Hail the King, the second series sequel to Monsters and Protectors. Now, we haven't seen Gabara do much since then, but hopefully with IDW having the rights to Gabara now, maybe we'll see some more interesting things done with this monster. Maybe a Freddy Krueger style redesign with his dream powers. His powers and, again, his dream origins also seem to be an influence on the Godzilla the series monster, the Crackler. And then later on in Godzilla Singular Point, the monster Salunga was mostly a weird fusion of Gabara and Baragon in design. So that's all I can really think of about talking about Gabara here for a little bit. It's definitely a cool monster, but not a monster I feel should really make a comeback in any big way. Maybe in like a cartoon or an anime form, but I think having him as a comic exclusive, and then also like Godzibon and stuff like that, I think that's a perfect role for this monster. He's not something that really needs to come back. His design is boring. His powers are kind of boring. His original movie sucks. Like, straight up. Godzilla's Revenge sucks, sorry. And then that's really it. I do hope he comes back for Godzilla Battle Line, because he's not in many video games either, especially ones that are actually like noteworthy, where it actually introduces something that's can be talked about with the monster. But until next time, Kaiju fans, this is Monster of the Week. The next week's monster has already been voted on. It will be put up next weekend, as I am moving Monster of the Week to a weekend schedule opposed to on Monday. It just makes it a hell of a lot easier for me to record and edit and everything on the weekends opposed to the weekdays after work. If you join the Kaiju Hugbox, the next monsters to be voted on for the next Monster of the Week after the current one will be Gypsy Danger / Avenger from Pacific Rim, the Dinosaur Tank from Ultraman, specifically Ultra 7, and King Cobra from Godzilla the Animated Series. So come to the Kaiju Hugbox and make your vote known. And then next week or actually be the week after, I'll be talking about that monster, with next week's being Varan. So, Kaiju fans, again, thanks for stopping on by, thanks for listening to this video, and hopefully maybe you learned something new about everyone's favorite dream ogre, and if not, well, maybe you will next time. And until then, Kaiju fans, peace out, and Minya, take it away.
Zilla says you should like and subscribe.